Over the past 2.5 years, we have turned 375K of ad spend into 2.3 million plus of revenue inside our online fitness business. And today I'm going to show you how to scale up your ad spend even with a small budget and keep it hyper profitable, because I've seen too many fitness professionals get led astray by B2B coaches who aren't helping them create financial projections for an actual fitness business, because most of them have never actually scaled a fitness business. And so we realize when we hit 100K months that if we can very easily be making the same amount of money that we were making at 50K if we don't look at the numbers correctly. And so today I'm going to run you through this financial projection sheet that I have created. You can grab a free copy of this in the link below. And so let's dive into it. So whenever we are starting to increase or we want to start running ads, man, maybe I can talk today. It's always typically because, we've done decently organically, we're coaching a lot of people, and now because we're working a lot, we want to hire out a coach, right? Like that's just the first thing somebody tells you. Maybe your coach is like, yeah, your next thing you need to hire a coach. You're working a lot of people, you're wearing every hat, and I get it. It can feel exhausting, right? But before we do that, we need to prove that we can keep their book full, right? Because that's going to be a problem if you get them in, but then your sales drop back down. You've ran through all your organic audience, right? You've burned through that. And now there's not new sales coming in, and you're going to be right back to square one. And so when we're running ads, we basically, the scaling up method that we implement with people is we need to prove that we can create one sale a month. Then we need to go to one sale a week. And then if we want to get to $1 million of top line new revenue, right, then we need to be selling one per day. And so let's break this down. And so if you grab this financial calculator, I'm going to show you how you can use it, what numbers you need to adjust to do your financial projections, so on and so forth. And so when we first start out, right, we're looking at here, let's say we want to create $3,000 of new sales from ads in a month, right? So let's say our product is $3,000. So we just got to sell one, right? And so we want our total ad spend to be no more than 25%. I have it in here for 25% B4 divided by 4. All right, so that means our cost per acquisition, right, is at $750. Now, what we could do is get it down to $5, only 20% of our ad spend is what it costs to acquire this new customer. So now our cost per acquisition is at $600, right? So, but I'm going to start at 4 for you because typically it's around 25% when we're getting started, or that's the first metric that we need to be hitting to then scale it up more. And so next is, right, we hit 3,000. This looks great. We have no employee expenses, maybe no sales team, no coach. And so you get to the bottom here and we have total net margin of 62%, which is great, right? Of that 3,000, we're taking home 2,266. And so this is where all our expenses, you can see how expenses creep up very quickly, and it's going to creep up even more once we start getting to 100K months, right? And so Stripe fees, 2.9%, training app, $129 flat fee, typically nutrition app, $399 or $359 per client. Funnel CRM, $197 a month, right? Ad spend $750, and then miscellaneous at this lower amount, we'll just put it at about 5%, and it's going to increase 10 to 15% as we scale up. And so now though, here's where things start to get a ruck. It all comes down to your cash collected on that new client per month, right? So, some people will say you need to hit 2x of ad spend. And so if we did 750, we need to collect at least 1,500. So that means we're collecting 50% of the product up front. And you'll see later on that it continually ends up being 50% of the product collected up front. So that means we need to be getting a lot of paid in fulls, or we're getting a lot of people, putting half the product down on the front end. So for us, what we always want to do is, can we recoup our expenses within the first 30 days of new customers, right? And so we'll run those numbers. But basically, if you want to get to this point where you're running a small budget, you're proving that you can sell one client per month, right? What I want you to have is about $4,000 in the bank account, right? This will cover 3 months of total expenses at this new run rate, right? So $1,300. So that means when you're spending ads, right, you have that $4,000, you're going to have cash to test and implement, right, before you start running ads. So I'd rather you see that you have about $4,000 in your bank account before you start doing this, because it might not be $750 the first time. It might be $1,000, right? But we want to do our financial projections off of where we want to be. So Again, that takes it down lower. There's different reasons why, but our cost per acquisition might be at 1,000, right? And so that means our expenses, right, are higher, our profit margin's lower. We're taking now 1,600 versus 2,200, right? So on and so forth. But we want to have about 4,000 in our bank account to get there. And so now let's go up to phase 2, which is we want to be selling one per week, right? So we're at $12,000 is what we want our net sales growth, right? And let's keep it all the same, right? 750, 3,000, and then this is going to be 4, right? So now here, next thing we want to get to is we're selling for a month, right? And so all the numbers stay the same, and we're going to put this down at 20% before we kind of play with some numbers here in a second. But you'll see, right, our total expenses now are 8,000, our net profit is 6. Maybe that sounds great. And this is again from ads. Maybe you're still doing some organic. Net margin's already going down because we have some coaches, right? So I'm putting them all that basically of every one new sale that you re-sign over here and that you sell on the front end, right? They're getting about, let's say it's a 4-month program, they're getting $100 per client. So it's $400 off the front to them, right? We're going to be on the line for it. So let's just put it into the projections. And so eventually our total expenses of running this amount is going to be 8,000, right? So what I would like to see is that we are getting about $24,000 in our bank account as we start to scale up. It doesn't have to be all at once, right? Maybe you start it, you ramp up your ad spend to $1,500 per month and you're acquiring 2 customers. You can prove you can keep it underneath 750, right? Then you get it to 3, then we're at 4, right? But you'll see here, if we're only doing 2x cash collected on ad spend, right? That doesn't cover our total monthly expenses, right? And let's say we didn't hit that, right? We only collected 4.5, right? Now we're on the hook for $8,000 more of expenses in the future, right? And we're not going to start seeing the profit from these new customers until months 2, 3, and 4, right? And most likely 3 and 4. And so for us, right, this is where at this mark at 12,000, right, this is where we really need to start getting smart with our numbers before we try to make a jump to 50,000. And so what I mean by that is if we go up to 50,000, let's put this in, and we don't change how much cost per acquisition, we don't change our product price point, we don't improve our re-sign rates, right? You'll see here that we'll quickly get to a spot where our total monthly expenses are significantly higher than our net profit. And all it would take, right, is 1 month of you not being able to cover, your revenue's down by $30,000, right? And now you're eating into that whole month profit very quickly from, a month or 2 prior. And so let's say, we go up higher and cost per acquisition is even higher, right? Now we're looking at total monthly expenses of $27,000 and our net profit being $17,000, right? It sounds great on paper and 38% is a good profit margin, right? But what we could do going from 12, before we go there, 12,000, let's say we want to do 12,000, and we increase our price to 4,000, we decrease our cost per acquisition to 500, right? Now you can see you're making as much net profit almost at the 50K, right, run rate as you are at 12K, right? You're almost doubling this. You're super profitable. Your ROAS is 8% or 8x, right? And then let's say at this 12K mark, you really worked on increasing your LTV. So our best when we really pushed for it was we were getting 42% of people to re-sign, right? So out of 6 people we re-sign in a month, all right, we have a 42%. We're projecting, right? So again, this is projection. It's not necessarily what you're bringing home yet, right? If we can get the average of LTV, 42% of people re-signing. So you need a track of how many people offboard, right? How many of them are you re-signing? In the future, out of this, we should be able to re-sign 3, right? But if it's a lot lower, again, this is projecting your total revenue you're projecting to get if you keep the re-sign rate high, right? And what you're going to potentially collect on customers, right? Some people might not pay all the way through, right? So at this point though, at this 12,000, we increase price, we increase our cost per acquisition or decrease our cost per acquisition, we re-sign a certain amount to that, right? We're accounting for sales team commission, 10% at this point. So now you've hired somebody, right? You're starting to hire a setter, right? Maybe they're at around 2,400. So again, cash collected up front, our expenses are 12,000, right? We're in the hole of 3x, right? Eventually we'll get to a spot where we have $21,000 in monthly profit, right? But again, I'm projecting what you're going to end up fully paying the coaches. I want everything covered in our projections, right? So this is when things start to level out at this month, right? This is what you're going to be paying coaches. This is what you should hopefully be contracting. The numbers should all start to balance out. It's not going to necessarily be what it looks like on the very first end or very first month. And so here though, at this lower run rate, our net profit is almost double our expenses, right? That is what we want to see. I've seen so many people. I've seen other people whose businesses are bigger than ours, 400 or 500, some people at 750K, right? But they're only, they're doing 750K to maybe take home 75K, right? And then if they have one or two bad months, their profit's eaten into, right? They're, eating into not only the business savings, but also their personal savings. And, they're stressing out, not able to sleep. They have kids, right? And this is what I don't want for you. If you're somebody, sure, if you're 20 something, bro, scale it up, put all the risk. You only have rent, right? Not a big deal. But when you have kids, you have people that are counting on you. You need to ensure that profit is big, right? And so this is where you as a business owner have to play with the numbers at each stage before you scale. And so what I always want to see is that the profit you want to have, that you need to have to feel secure at night, right? You're hitting those numbers at the lower ad spend than you are before you go up to that higher ad spend, because it's always so much harder to now manipulate the numbers when the team's bigger, your expenses are higher, you're strapped into needing to keep that same amount of sales. And I don't want you to get to the spot where you're sweating month after month if you're going to produce enough sales, right? We want to have cash in the bank, cool. We might have a down month if we hire a closer or whatever, but we have so much cash in the bank, it doesn't matter, right? We can eat that. I can still pay myself and we're okay. That is how every solid business runs in the world. And when you're getting coached by somebody who's never scaled a fitness company, they don't understand how razor tight the margins are, right? They don't understand that, our price point is essentially 4 to 5 times less than theirs, that we have more fulfillment on the back end than they do, right? And that, cost per acquisition on the front end matters so much more when we are at such a lower price point. And so for us, right, at this lower price point, you can see that we could go up to 50K with our old numbers. If you weren't paying attention, let's say you're selling at 2,800, right? Your cost per acquisition's hovering around 800. Your re-sign rate is only at 20% because you have bad leads that you're convincing to get via firm, right? Now here, we're making next to nothing, right? That's what it, comparatively at that 12,000, and versus, right, our net profit was significantly higher by simply raising our prices, right? Decreasing CAC, increasing our re-sign rate to 40%. Now all of a sudden we're making $20,000 more profit. And so I can help you manipulate, or I'd rather help you manipulate numbers at this lower amount to increase our CAC, or decrease our CAC, increase our product price point. If we can do those two things, it's going to scale up so much better at 50K, right? And so I'm going to show you what you can do to decrease CAC here in a second, but let's go back to our old numbers. Let's say we're up at 800, right? 800 to acquire a customer, right? Our product's still 2,800 because you weren't paying attention. You got big number, shiny object syndrome, new revenue amount, monthly revenue amount. You got super excited at that, right? You're chomping at the bit to just get that revenue number up. Your re-sign rate still sucks, right? Versus, remember that 12K, when we optimized it, we were still at 20K profit, right? And so those might be extreme examples, extreme numbers, right? It's easier to put it in a projection than it is to make it happen in reality, right? But simple things like increasing your price, trying to decrease your CAC, right? Increase your LTV are always going to be the 3 things that you can pull to make your business much more profitable and not have as much risk with expenses. And so for us, when we're looking at CAC, how do we want to lower CAC? There's 3 ways. You either get more goodwill with an affluent customer, so you have, a pool of people who have watched your long form content. They know your name and face before they ever see your ad. That's always going to make your ad more profitable than just throwing it to a cold audience, right? Second is going to be how you structure your campaign setup. So let's say you run a lead campaign. You can put more friction on the front end to let less people through, less tire kickers through, who are looking for free things. So then Meta knows, okay, I'm going to go out and find more people like this. So that you might incur higher lead costs, but your cost per acquisition goes down, right? And I'm going to show you why lead cost doesn't matter here in a second. And then lastly, right, the LTV, right? If I can acquire a customer, the product is 4,000, to acquire them, the cost per acquisition is about 20%. Let's say I get a re-sign rate out of 1 out of 2, right? That cuts my ad cost down to 15%, right? If I'm re-signing 1 out of 2, that means I get one customer essentially for double, right? So now CAC or the ad spend is about 10% of the total product. So if I can get my re-sign rate up, right, versus I'm only re-signing 1 out of 4, that's how my ad spend quickly eats up more of my total top line revenue per month, right? And so we're looking at top line total monthly revenue. This should say monthly, but total monthly revenue of a 20% re-sign at 50K, running at a 50K projection. So you'll see here that at these crappier numbers with a lower price point, we're not getting to that 50K of new sales where we need to match, right? So we're at a 3.5x ROAS, which is not going to be good long term, right? People are going to fail payments. You're never going to necessarily collect all of this front end amount. And so we need to put more padding on that. And so again, let's say we easily just take it up to 3,800, right? Increase it by 1,000. Sweet. Now we're at 4.8. I want to see around 5x return on ad spend. Now let's take this up to 40%, right? Now we're hitting 83K months with that simple bump in price, right? Even with a CAC at 800, right? But if we're re-signing a lot more people, right? Which our highest was like 42% for a year, right? Our profit is so much higher at this 50K ad run rate, right? We're actually taking in 60K of new sales, right? 83 overall because we increase our LTV. But again, this still comes back down to we need to be, if we're only collecting 2x cash, right? We're still not covering expenses. We will, right, after month 1 and 2, but we need to do everything we can to try and make that new cash collected cover total expenses, right? So everything after that is profit. So that could be like looking like a firm, so on and so forth. And so, this might be a big stretch, but your expenses here are at 35,000, right? And so, ideally, when getting up to that 50K, I want to see you get around 100K in the bank account, right? I want you to start working up, saving up as much as possible, because you'll see here, right? Let's go from 20K jump to 50K jump, right? So you're going for that 20K jump, right? At your 20K jump, you should have around 43 in the bank account, right? It might be a little bit hard to get there. But again, this all comes down to your risk reward tolerance, right? You can definitely scale up with less savings in there, right? But it's all based on you, right? If you're young, you want to scale, right? Go for it, right? That's what we did. But the next thing you know, right? You have a few bad months and you're not taking home. Now, whereas we have kids, we have on the line, I need to be covering, 15, 16K of home expenses, right? Take home. And then on top of that, right? That's my whole kind of profit at this current run rate at 20K, right? And so I need to figure out, do I want to squeak out more ad spend, right? Do I want to put more on the line? Do I want to try to get CAC down, right? I get CAC down. Let's say my expenses are 15K, right? Just cutting down CAC by 300 each, right? Now I have double that. My take home that I need is 15K. I have, 18K to save, right? So before you scale up, it's always about looking at the next number or the next place that you need to be, that you need to be able to have the wiggle room. Because if you go to that higher number with the same numbers at the 800, you're not going to be able to outlast the expenses that it's taking to get there. You're not going to start seeing the profit until month 4, the re-sign, so on and so forth. And you're never going to actually reap the rewards of taking the risk, right? You'll scale up, you make more sales, but you're like, my bank account says otherwise. What the hell do I do? All right, I need to fire everyone, take the ad spend back down, freak out, fire the ads manager, fire the setters, fire the extra coach, whatever it is, right? And so you panic, and so that's because you didn't project what is the cover that you need for that next stage. And so let's say we want to get to 100K, last one, right? We're at $800 CAC per our CAC. We have a re-sign rate of, it's going to go down as we get bigger, right? Typically always does. Let's say it's 35%, so kind of like 1 out of 3. Let's do 33%. So we're like 1 out of 3 re-sign, right? So every month we're projecting that we're going to have, about 10 re-sign. We're selling this at 3,800. But now what happens is you get a salesperson, right? Because they wouldn't need to be making about 10K a month if they're going to be a good salesperson. But your CAC might go up for 2-3 months, right? And so, Next thing you know, right, your total ROAS is 3.2. You have way more on the line of expenses than you do profit, and you need to keep things going at this same clip, right? And your expenses are creeping up more and more, and coaches are probably going to be more than this because of months past, right? They're going to be, let's do it at 20% of total revenue, right? Let's do D equals D17 times 0.2, right? Oops. 0.2. Right? They're at $20,000 of spend, right? And if you're only cash collecting 2x, right? Your expenses are 65, right? It gets very quickly as you're scaling up to be like, where's the money coming? When is it? I'm not seeing it until month 4. Resigns. Well, what if resigns go down? And so we always need to be building in as much cushion as possible. And that's going to be with CAC, with product price point, and customer resign rates. If you can pull those 3 levers, right? At each stage, try to get them as low as possible. I will always want to see it around, 750 or less, 750 tops, right? Then we're starting to make a little bit more sense, right? Now we're at 50K cash collected, right? Net profit is 87, 91 in total expenses. We're still at about 48% net margin, right? Which is great, which is really high. So you'd probably be more around 40%. I could probably take up the miscellaneous here up to 1.5, right? So on and so forth. Maybe the sales team is up to 1.5, right? Now, again, your expenses are creeping up, 100K, so on and so forth. You're at 40% net margin. But to take this back home, right, all you need to do is be making sure at each stage you are hitting the cost per acquisition, the LTV, right, and the price point you want at the future stage. Now, prove yourself. Prove that concept now at the lower stage, and it's going to be so much easier and so much more profitable at the higher stage, higher ad spend, less risk, less getting stuck in the cash loop where we have more coaches, we need more sales, we have more leads, so now we need more salespeople. Since we have more salespeople, right, we need to make more sales so they can get paid. Now we need more coaches to manage that, and you're stuck in this infinite loop, and your only way forward is more revenue versus you can easily be making more profit to your bottom line at 50K than you can be at 100K, right? Very easily. And so it's all about playing the numbers, right? Where in the past, we went up, our product price point was 2,800. Our cost per acquisition would range anywhere from it would be right around 750, right? We're increasing, coaching costs, sales team costs, but our coaching costs, we've increased our, and so we've been there before, right? Where we're scaling up and our cost per acquisition is going up because we're not scaling up our ads manager the right way. We have so many more leads coming through, but they're not qualified. So now our cost per acquisition is up to 1,000. Our product price point was still at 2,800, right? Our LTV was still in the lower 30s. Our resign rates was in the low 30s. And so we get up top and we're like, whoa, we are making as much profit at 100K as we were at 50, 60K. And we're having to manage all these people all the time. We're actually kind of working more. And now if we have one bad month, our expenses are so high, right? 75K and our take home's 25K, right? What happens if we have a few bad months? We can't cover 75K. We just got to making this amount revenue wise. We can't cover 75K very long with the savings we have in our bank account, right? If we're only taking home 25K, we need to take home 15K to ourselves. There's 10K left over. We would need, 100 months or 10 months to get to a spot where we can, or 7 months that we can cover that 75K, right? And that's if everything's moving perfectly, right? And so versus, right, once we changed our price point to 4,200, right? We got our CAC down from 1,000 to about 750 at that amount, right? Then we essentially doubled our profit, right? We have less coaches because we're selling less people but making more money because our higher price point, right? Our CAC's low, so our ad spend's lower, right? And now we're making a lot more profit that it's much easier to save and cover those expenses if we ever have bad months, because it's going to happen with ads. Meta's going to have an election year. Things will get janky. Your ad account might get shut down, right? The way you're producing sales might not work as well. in the future, right? You might not be hitting the same clip for a few months in a row. So you need to be able to have that cushion, especially if you're somebody who has a family, you have people that you provide for, so on and so forth. If you don't knock this out of the park, create your financial projections for the future, you're gonna get to a spot where you're just feeling the bank account get smaller. You're putting it on the credit card. You're freaking out. You're not seeing the actual fruition of your efforts. And that's what I don't want for you. And so, again, you can grab this profitability calculator in the link below. Also in there, I have 2 other things for you. You can grab my DM selling playbook. This is how we transition from selling via sales teams to selling to via DMs with our high ticket fitness. And lastly, if you need help running ads, scaling ads up in a smart, effective manner with small budgets to start getting out of having to wear every single role or every single hat, you can also grab a membership to our FitPro Profits membership. Super cheap price. You can cancel any week. And I'd love to have you in either of those. But either way, I hope this helps you make your business be more financially secure, take home the profit that you want every month, right? And spread the impact that you want to spread, but keep that time, location, profit, freedom along the way. So talk to you next time. Peace.